It's actually coming from our colleague from CBS News, who says that she's interviewed multiple green card holders who are sitting in Doha in what looks like a gym. They're not being allowed to leave. Some have been there for several days, which doesn't make any sense, because if they've got valid visas, they should be able to get on a flight and get out. Do you have, is this an aberration in a system that's overwhelmed right now, or is this something that you can take and look into to kind of unfurl this process?
Well, as I said, our goal is to see to it that individuals are in transit countries for as short a period as possible. And it's certainly our intent to have and to see this process speed up. And we're going to be able to do that for a number of reasons, but first and foremost, because we have this additional capacity coming on board. In order to see a steady flow through places like Doha, we have already brought other sites online. I've confirmed that flights have landed at Ramstein. You heard me list a litany of countries that have agreed to host in some form or fashion American citizens, third country nationals, Afghans at risk.
These guys seem to have slipped through the cracks, I think, is the concern. And so is this a process that's just completely overwhelmed at this point?
Again, it's very difficult for me to speak to anecdotal reports. Even if I could, we typically don't do that from the podium out of privacy concerns and other considerations. But every report like this is one that we will look into. Broadly speaking, we do expect that the flow through transit points like Doha will move at a faster clip in the coming hours and the coming days, given the capacity that's coming online. Yes?
So, can I give an example? There is an Afghan who works for the US Embassy. Now he's stuck outside. What should he do to get in? Can he get a piece of paper which will let him pass? And when you say that Taliban have assured you that they'll let them pass, that's not happening. So someone like him, the only thing he has is assurances from the Taliban the US won't do any more. And how long are you prepared to wait before you deliver on the threatened punishments that you mentioned earlier? And would it be too late for these guys who are stuck outside? Taliban know who they are because they claim to work for the because they say they work for the US. Are you going to wait a week, 2 weeks, and by then they could be killed along with their families?
Yeah. So again, it's very difficult for me, impossible for me to speak to specific cases. What I will say, though, is that a member of our LES team, our locally employed staff, we have been in touch with them. In an individual in a position like that will have contact information, will have been in touch with officials on the ground with this building's consular corps. So that back and forth is something we have dedicated profound resources to. Some of this is taking place on the ground in Kabul, but we have brought online actual call centers around the world where our teams are on the phone speaking to those on the ground, asking them about their whereabouts, asking them about their plans and intentions, asking them with whom they're with, to get the best sense of how we might be able to help specific individuals. So it's not something I'm typically able to do from the podium, but there are hundreds and probably more people in this building and around the world who are doing just that. To your second question, we recognize that time is of the essence. We recognize that in order for us to help the largest number of people, that our operations need to be efficient and effective. I think you are seeing that. You have seen you've heard from the Pentagon, you've heard from the White House about the number of people who have cycled through the HKIA over the course of the past couple days. Again, we are going to have additional capacity for relocation sites coming online in the coming hours and the coming days. We expect that will further improve the efficiency of this process. But we do know that the most important element, the most precious resource we have now is in many ways time. And that is why people in this building and around the world are working around the clock to be of assistance to as many people as we can for as long as we can. Kylie.
Can you just give us some more
details. You mentioned this task force focused just on Americans. Is that a new task force, or is that part of the, larger State Department task force?
Nope. So this is a task force that is dedicated just to this mission. It is dedicated solely and exclusively to contact with American citizens who have indicated a desire to be repatriated to the United States. As you know, American citizens are encouraged to register with the embassy when they arrive in a foreign country. We have used that registration system to be in touch with that entire community. And some people who aren't in a country like Afghanistan actually use that registration system to get updates from the embassy in Kabul. So even the number of people who are registered for a system like that isn't precisely reflective of the number of people on the ground. On top of that, you have Americans who come and go. And it was certainly our encouragement and over the past several weeks, warnings to private American citizens that they should leave Afghanistan, given the deteriorating security situation. We have urged them to do so since for months now. For weeks now, we have warned them to do so. So this task force is following up on the primarily email communication that we've been in with these American citizens. And it is to find out precisely where these individuals are, if they would like to be repatriated. Do they have any family members with them? How might they be able to relocate to Kabul or to HKaya if they're not in the Kabul area? So this is a very personalized, it is a very tailored approach to provide as much assistance as we can to every single American. Because again, that is our priority, to offer repatriation services to every single American who wishes to come back here.
So is this just a State Department task force, or is this interagency?
This
and
is
when you are, sorry, yeah.
It's a Department of State effort.
Okay, and once you have that information, are you sharing it with the U.S. military? And is the U.S. military now going out and getting any of those people to bring them to the airport? Because there are reports of U.S. helicopters now leaving the airport in Kabul to go get some Americans and Afghans.
I am going to let my colleagues at the Pentagon discuss what they are doing now. Of course, the president referenced an effort to bring a number of Americans, 168 Americans, across the perimeter. But when it comes to what we may be in a position to do to assist Americans, we will do everything that we responsibly can to assist Americans. What we're talking about now, this task force that is actually, we're calling these American citizens, but we're also going to be in a position to text them, to continue emailing them, every conceivable form of communication. This is indicative of that. We're not ruling anything out, but again, right now we are focused on ascertaining where these Americans are, the condition that they're in, how many people they may be traveling with, and what their desired plans are.
Are you sharing that information at all at an interagency level?
Look, if it will prove useful to our interagency partners and it's appropriate to do so, we will. But right now, we are trying to ascertain the universe of Americans who may be interested in relocation and the ways we might be able to assist them. Take a final question or two, Daphne.
There's been an increasing number of reports of Taliban targeting the press. Is the United States, in its conversations with the Taliban, asking them not to interfere with journalists and allow them to work freely? And then I just have a quick clarifying question, again from the top. Sorry. You said most flights would go through a country like Qatar before going on to the dozen countries you listed. Are there any cases where flights are going from Kabul to any of those countries directly?
In almost all cases, I don't want to be categorical here because we don't want to rule anything out. In almost all cases, certainly the cases I'm aware of, these flights are going to the nearby transit countries, again, as a way to maximize the flow, as a way to reduce the burden on the fuel supply at HKaya. When it comes to members of the press, this is, and I'll address this on a couple levels. I know I and all of my colleagues in this building, we have been in touch with many of you, with your news organizations, in some cases with your Afghan affiliates on the ground. And we actually do have an element here in this building that is focused squarely and exclusively on efforts to relocate members of the media, because we do recognize there is a rather large, it's smaller now than it was several days ago, but there's still a rather large contingent of media representatives on the ground in Kabul. We have been gratified that a number of journalists have been able to safely relocate from Afghanistan. We, of course, saw the statement that the New York Times put out, I believe it was yesterday. We have been in regular touch here on the ground in Kabul with news organizations and individuals who fall into those categories in order to offer every bit of assistance. Now, you asked a slightly different question, and the question you asked was reports of Taliban harassment of the press. This is something that we do take extraordinarily seriously, and we take it extraordinarily seriously on a couple levels. One, it's the basic matter of freedom of the press. The press, whether it is in Kabul or Washington, D.C., or any other country or city around the world, should be able to report without intimidation, without harassment, without threat. And every single report that contravenes that is a matter of great concern. We are also taking note of, and we've seen this from some of your colleagues, the reports that members of the press have been impeded in their passage, in their safe passage, what should be their guaranteed safe passage through the city and to the Kabul International Airport. That is also something, those reports, that we take extraordinarily seriously. We're raising this on all levels with our interlocutors, and we'll continue to do that. Yes?
A bit different question about the peninsula. The State Department announced the special envoy to North Korea, Sung Kim, is visiting Seoul tomorrow. So could you give any details of the talking point of his meeting with South Korean officials? And also, does he have any plan to contact with North Korea directly during his visit?
Well, you are right. We did confirm earlier today, I believe it was, that Special Representative Kim will travel to the ROK, South Korea, from August 21 through the 24th. During his visit, he'll meet with his counterpart, that is the Special Representative for Korean Peninsula Peace and Security Affairs, No Nyuk-dak, and other senior South Korean officials. They'll, in the context of those discussions, discuss the situation on the Korean Peninsula and continue to plot a coordinated way forward. As you know, we have emphasized the role of our allies when it comes to our collective efforts to advance our shared goal, and that is the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. It is why Secretary Blinken went to Japan and South Korea as his first overseas trip. It's precisely why the heads of state of Japan and South Korea have both visited the White House. We know, and we have determined through the course of our North Korea policy review, that one of perhaps the most effective approach will be an approach that relies on coordination and acting in concert with our allies and partners, and certainly the ROK is one of those very important allies. Connor.
There's this report from a Norwegian security firm that was sent to the United Nations and provided to the U.S. and other governments. I'm wondering if you can speak to whether or not the administration views it as credible. And then there's also a report from Amnesty International today about Hazaras being targeted and killed. You've spoken repeatedly about the administration watching what the Taliban is doing. You now have evidence that they are committing atrocities. To Jessica's question earlier, the tools that you're talking about using are long-term, and we're talking about things that could happen in a matter of days and hours. What are you doing? What are you willing to do right now to address these atrocities?
Well, on your question about the NGO report, I understand this was an NGO report that was prepared for and provided to the UN. We have been in touch with the UN about this report. We have received a copy of the report. We're going to take a very close look at it, but I'm just not in a position to offer any initial conclusions just yet. When it comes to the Hazaras, these are reports from last month, I believe. And last month and this month and the month before that, we have been very clear and have spoken in no uncertain terms, condemning reports of Taliban atrocities. We'll continue to condemn any reported atrocities, precisely because they are violations of the public commitment by Taliban leaders to seek reconciliation for all Afghans. This is what the Taliban have said they want. Now, again, their actions often don't match their words. What matter to us is the former. We will be watching with the international community their actions. If we determine that the Taliban have continued to commit atrocities, that they are not living up to the responsibility they have to protect and uphold the rights of all of their citizens, including women, girls, and minorities, we will work with our allies and partners to hold the perpetrators accountable. Now, you asked about the temporal element of this, short-term versus long-term. We are making very clear to the Taliban, especially when it comes to our priority right now, that is to say the operation ongoing at HKIA, our operations together with our international partners. We have made very clear to the Taliban that any effort to impede that operation, and certainly any effort to threaten or seek to inflict harm on any American would be met with swift and pretty decisive response. We have made that very clear to them. When it comes to any future government in Afghanistan, look, there are discussions that continue to be ongoing between the Afghan parties, the Taliban and representatives of the Islamic Republic. Together with our allies, with our partners, we have encouraged them to pursue a political settlement that first and foremost protects and upholds the rights of all of Afghan's citizens. This is something that we have been outspoken about, but again, importantly, it has been something that we have spoken about with a single voice, together with our closest allies and partners, and together with a universe of countries around the world, that when we act in concert, it's more than about these ephemeral issues of recognition or legitimacy. It is about questions that may well be existential to any regime. The ability to govern, the ability to run a country effectively, the ability to have a functioning economy, the ability to travel, the ability to access funds. These things matter. These things will matter to any government around the world. They will certainly matter to any future government in Afghanistan that will be more reliant than almost any other country in the world for international assistance. Thank you all very much.